And here we go again, take 2 for Tuesday Night Live. Sorry, folks, for those listening for the glitch. Turns out PJ Crows was actually a North Korean spy sent to undermine the Crowcast because it presents a threat to national security. Either that or it was Macca 19 from the Port Board doing the same thing. What do you reckon, Nikki?
Well...
One or the other.
Phoenix Trump took care of it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we made the cast great again.
Oh, don't get so
Yeah.
Okay, so just quickly...
Hey, my missile's bigger than you. And look, we got to start again because I deleted the other recording, Nikki, so...
okay.
And I still don't have...
You still don't have my music.
I still don't have the bloody music, so just here we go.
That's
I'm
fine.
here with Macca and Nikki. PJ Crows might join us again later, who knows. But it's over to you, Nikki, for Nikki's news.
Okay, so this should be a really quick conversation, shouldn't it, Macca, about the stuff up that Port seems to have done regarding the game in China. And the fact that it seems they actually might be out of money, even though I had said earlier that Keith Thomas was on radio and he mentioned that, they've been promised this $4 million from sponsors, etc. I don't personally trust what comes out of him regarding contracts because, as we saw with the debacle earlier regarding who's going to wear a home Guernsey or not, they don't seem to be all over that particular part of the business, which is very poor for an AFL club, if so.
It's going to be very interesting, Nikki, because the AFL have made it very clear that they aren't sponsoring this game and they're not up for the cost of this particular game, and that it's an arrangement between Port and the Gold Coast, and if Port want the game as they do, then it's up to them to find the money and find it elsewhere. So if you're right, and there's always that chance with the Port Adelaide that you are right, and that all the sponsors say, we're not going to give you any money because you're not putting on any game. Well, it'd be interesting what happens then, because Port Adelaide, who are already a basket case living out of the AFL's pocket, would be Well, we've gone haywire.
What happened then?
PJ, you need to change the push to talk.
Oh my God, what a nightmare. I've just muted PJ until he gets his shit together.
Oh, okay, well, so...
I stuffed you up again, Phoenix.
You got to do push to talk, PJ. So if you've got it on anything except push to talk, then it'll echo back. And once you've talked, you've got to take your finger off the button so it doesn't echo back.
This is a lesson for anybody who wants to call in and join us.
I am.
No, still doing it.
What's push to talk?
Oh, wow. Go into configuration and select push to talk.
If anybody's
muting you again.
This is the definition of a schmozzle.
This is actually disgraceful. And I've got to say that, things have fallen to shit once Peter J is not here. So, the father figure's away and Vardy's saying Peter Bill's profound shit.
No pressure, PJ, no pressure. Well, whilst he's got the head trying to sort a few things. Nope, there it's back again. Yeah, just
wow, keep talking. Just keep talking. I'll mute him.
All right. Well, what I'm going to say for the third or whatever is that Nikki could be onto something there because of the fact that they are already being sponsored to quite handsomely by the AFL, and they haven't got the money lying around. If their sponsors do renege on them because they say, well, there's no game, no money, well. Then who's going to pay the bills? Because Port haven't got the money, and AFL say they're not going to pay the money. it'll be a very interesting situation.
The other big thing that came out regarding the weekend, there were two things for me. One was the ridiculous schmozzle. I think it was even worse than schmozzle just then, of the incident that happened at Good Friday football, where that field umpire should not have a game next week. I know that Kennedy has come out and tried to explain away, no, he was correct because he was verbally told by a player that's who was going to ruck contest. The only problem is that it was actually explained in the rules that in order to nominate, you had to put your hand up. So
Correct.
He should never have accepted somebody saying, "Oh, I'm the ruckman," who didn't put his hand up. And you could actually hear it, and they did play it on one of the shows. They showed audio from other games after that. And you actually had the field umpires telling everybody, you're going from your team and you're going from your team. So they made a correction. They know it was a stuff up. And you know what? I'm sorry, the AFL umpiring department, you should have admitted he stuffed up and that we're going to correct it. Instead of this, what they do with the, umpires are never wrong thing and we try and explain it. Everybody knows they're wrong. Just say they got it wrong. They're human. We would actually accept these kind of things more often if they did that.
You're right, Nikki. And but the way that this rule is being administered is a bloody disgrace, quite frankly. And they were talking about how many times this must happen during the course of a game that the umpire's got to say who's hands up, boys, who's going, etc. And then and if nobody says it, he asks them who's going up, and it's like going back to grade one. I put my hand up. I've got to do wee teacher. I mean, it's just bloody stupid. And this is grown men playing AFL football, and we've got this thing where they got to act like little bloody kids putting their hands up. Either go back to the old rule where you could have a third man up, or just ping it when a third one jumps up. One of the two. But get rid of this stupid nomination thing. I think it's a disgrace and it's a blight on the game. Amongst many other blights at the moment.
The thing with the whole nomination thing is it's actually a rule put in place to... it's a duplicate rule, because if you just had a situation where a third player isn't allowed up, then the worry is from the umpires department and the people talking about this is, someone could block someone that's intending to go up. Well, the umpires should be adjudicating blocking anyway. So if you've got two players going, if you've got a ruck contest and one ruckman goes up and the other guy gets blocked, whether he's the ruckman or whether he's someone else in the contest, he's still not allowed to get blocked illegally. So
spot on.
So just adjudicate the rules as they are and stop trying to overcomplicate everything and control everything, because the coaches have already shown every rule that is put in place to try and control the situation, the coaches find a way to exploit it.
They do, but what would you prefer then? Would you prefer that
just have a simple rule that says if the only
Or a midfielder. Yeah.
Well, the other thing about the blocking thing is that since time immemorial, when you look at a centre bounce, for example, you'll see midfielders, they'll probably have a tagger on, and the tagger's trying to stand in front of that midfielder all the time.
And you are allowed to do that. It's when they actually turn their back away. That's
Nikki,
what they've always done. The rules have always been there.
Nikki, I think you're right.
Using them.
Actually, I think if that is right, and I think you might be right there, because it's not quoted very often. But if it is as simple as that, then that would make it work. Because you'll always get a situation where somebody's going to be in somebody's way, and that's what I was afraid with Phoenix when you're talking about the blocking. Or it's really it's. I think it's as Nicky said, if they turn around looking away from the ball, making an effort to block that person. So I think, as you said, then just rely on the fact that only any one team can go up to the ball, and if two go up, then it's a free kick.
Oh my God, it's simple.
The other thing that I find that's pretty stupid is the fact that they seem to be. Well, no, actually, that rule's, I was about to say, not quite right. The one where they knock it through for a point, which we saw, I think it was the Hawthorn game, and you take the free kick right from the goal square. I don't get that.
Oh, they want to try and keep the ball alive, but they're making it incredibly hard for defenders. I mean, it actually hasn't been a problem. Because what that team, by knocking it through, is they're actually giving a point to the opposition.
Yeah, but what the commentators, they made the same point, Nicky, was the fact that it was, fairly close to the behind post, maybe a metre inside from that. That's where they knocked the ball through. Yet when the free kick was given, he took it right from in the goal square, right in front. Why wouldn't it be from where it was knocked through?
It's a stupid rule. It shouldn't.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Because they brought this bloody stupid rule in, you draw a line out parallel with the end of the goal square, and if it's behind that, because that's what our bloke got pinged for as well. But it's a stupid effing rule, it just. Yeah, I agree with you. And, since time, it's been played a certain way since time immemorial. And then all of a sudden, some Einstein, third man up's been going on ever since I can remember in footy, and also knocking it through for a point. But now, got some Einstein who thinks they're onto something big. Well, they are. It's big and shitty. It's no good.
And the other piece of stupidity that happened on the weekend, there were 2 bumps that occurred. And I was absolutely shocked at the number of commentators who thought that both of those bumps were reportable because the other players got injured. They were both fair bumps. They were both in play. The Zeeble one he wasn't late, or if he was, it was just like a teeny little bit.
To people that are complaining about silence.
Yeah.
In my effort to mute PJ, I actually muted myself. so
That's why
I had a lot of good things to say that
did.
no one will ever hear.
We are a shambles tonight. This is going to be hilarious.
PJ, speak. Just let me know that you're there, can you?
He's dead.
There is the silence.
God, he's there, but he's not saying anything now. You got to PJ. You got to push the button with push to talk.
He keeps muting himself.
Oh my God, this is a scream. PJ. Anyway, whatever. Keep going.
Well, I was about to say, Well, I nearly made it worse before when Nicky was saying that there were two. I thought you said two dumps on the field, Nicky. You know, I was thinking, where are you going to with that?
Anyway, let's straighten this up because this is turning into a shambles, and I'm sure we've got some pretty incisive stuff to say if anyone's still listening. So what else is going on?
But out of that Hawthorn Geelong game, thanks Hawthorn for bumping us off the top of the ladder.
I don't mind too much.
Yeah, we've still got the right number of points, and there were, of course, the two players, Menegola and Parsons, have both been rubbed out respectively for 1 week and 2 weeks, if they accept the penalties. Although they were trying to explain away that Parsons was just wrong-footed and he accidentally put his elbow up, but the tribunal, the match review panel, actually said, the elbow up was intentional. Was the way that they looked at it.
That's the way I saw it too, Nicky. Actually, he's not. He's got to be quite a reasonable footballer, Parsons. But
it wasn't bad.
But the elbow was dead set deliberate, and that one I want to raise that didn't raise the ire of the panel, but it did raise mine. Zeeble. I mean, the week before he'd thrown his body around, half killed somebody, and I thought that was not quite within the rules of the game. But the Cloak one, you aren't allowed to hit down the front. Now, he just smashed Cloak down the front.
Yep. Was it the front? I thought it was more side.
No,
believe me, it was right down his sternum, and he just smashed him down the front. And I thought to myself, that could be 3 or 4 games.
Yeah.
But they weren't concerned about it.
Well,
I don't know.
Macca, tell me the difference between that one and Charlie Cameron's the week before.
Well, it was only the fact that Zeeble's was twice as bad.
Yeah, I mean, Cameron made a little bit of head contact, but essentially the actions were the same, and the result was similar because Cloak's going to be out for at least a month with that, and Zeeble doesn't even get cited. I mean, like, it's a shirt. He's hit him late with a shirt front. That's what he's done. You're just not allowed to do it.
No, they outlawed the shirt front, and I yelled out "Hallelujah" the day they did, because I remember when I was playing, I got a shirt front down the front.
Sure,
Well, I busted 3 ribs of mine, so it hurts.
Well, that's how I got concussion last year, was shirt front on, so it's not actually banned in our league.
Yeah, and everyone's saying, there was no head contact, which is why he didn't get cited. Bad luck. There was front on contact, which has been out of the game for 3 years now.
I'd say a bit more, but definitely it's been out for some time. Now, I would say it could be anything up to 4 or 5 years, but it was when it went, I thought, thank God it's gone.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's just another example of the match review panel and the laws of the game committee just being completely haphazard. What else have we got, Nick?
Well, that kind of leads in the Cloak injury. The other significant injury from the round happened in the Gold Coast Carlton game, where Sam May did his hamstring. So
Handy
I thought
for
that's
us.
so I thought that's a nice little lead into our little dissection of the game on Saturday night.
Just on Sam Day, though, I think
Sam May.
May. I think you're talking about Sam Day because he's already out injured, isn't he?
Yes.
And just on Day, that firstly, he was supposed to be the boy wonder, and we were all upset that we wouldn't be able to get him here in South Australia. But Sam Day has turned out to be a very ordinary footballer. Very pleased to see that May won't be playing, though. He's a very vigorous player, and he always hurts somebody.
Sam Day, though, as a junior, he was another one of these lads that was just a really good size. I mean, he used to clean up at junior levels just because he was a good size, but I think he was an import from a basketball program like at junior level.
And once he got into the AFL system, he didn't really put on bulk too much or how to actually kind of use his body well.
No, he just looked like a very average player at AFL level, and yet, and I think Phoenix is right. He had that physical size advantage when he was playing under 18s. He had bulk and he had strength, and it made him look good. But you find your match when you come up at AFL if you haven't got any little tricks up your sleeve.
Yeah.
Might imagine this is where the confusion. I called him Sam. It's Stephen May. They're too close in their names. They play for that mob.
Like, given the bizarro world night we're having, Vardy, that's the least of our problems.
The fact that
That's almost correct by the way we've been going.
So, on to the Essendon Crows game, and my initial comment was that people bleating about the third quarter need to sit down and have a rest, because we've had 3 good solid wins. We won the game basically by half time. No doubt, blokes saw Charlie's injury and thought, I don't want to get injured too. And also just a bit of a mental lapse after, what's that, 12, 14 pretty solid quarters. So I think we can forgive one quarter, and they certainly addressed it in the last anyway. What do you guys reckon?
Well, sorry, Nick, I was just going to say, it's always been accepted that in any football match, it's rare for the opposition not to have one good quarter. Every dog had his day, and we may have mentally just switched down a little bit, like you just said, Phoenix, and they may have switched up a bit because they've been roasted at half time. But, it mattered very little, and because one thing about this particular side, it can regroup, and it can regroup quickly, and it can also even within a quarter, it can play 2 to 3 different styles of football. So I'm very, very happy with our coaching staff, and from my point of view, the third quarter wasn't pretty because we expected more, but means nothing in the overall context of the season.
And what we're not doing there is actually giving credit to Essendon. In the way that they set up, I mean, there was a concerted plan, the way that they were setting up in the third quarter to try and keep that ball in their forward half. And they worked hard to do that. The only issue was that we were actually we couldn't get it out too much, but we were able to push them to having shots wide. So we were still kind of controlling it without being able to get the ball out. And as PJ said, complaints about a 10-goal win shows where we are as a club.
Yeah. And he also makes a good point, and clearly he's more benefit on chat than on voice. But Essendon did have a very low, I reckon it was only 13 tackles up to half-time, PJ. It was 23 to something low. And Worsfold made a point of it after the game in his press conference, saying that their intensity had to lift in the third quarter. And, given we're already 10 goals up at half-time, they increased their intensity. Pikey experiments a bit with a few different looks through the midfield, as seen by a couple of time on ground stats being a bit lower for some of our senior players like Sloaney. And, it was always going to happen. And as you rightly point out, Nicky, it wasn't as if it was raining goals. They had a lot of difficult shots for goals, and all it was we were breaking down on transition.
And we couldn't get it out, that was for sure. They had it bottled up there for a long time.
Yeah.
But it didn't cost us that much. And another question I'd like to raise is that I've heard, and it's interesting because I heard the coaches' votes, which was slightly different than I would have had them, but then again, they know a lot more than I do. But the Sloane Walker Betts situation, how did you guys rate him in your own mind before hearing the coaches' vote?
I reckon probably I would have gone Betts because he was more consistent. I think it was a toss-up between Betts and Sloane for me. They were in the game longer in terms of the whole game over the 4 quarters, and Walker was only just behind them. To me, it was pretty close between all 3.
It was, which is why I asked the question.
I would have had Sloane, Betts, Walker.
Yeah, I see now. I would have had Sloane, Walker, Betts.
Mm. Well, the only reason I'd have Betts ahead of Walker is that Betts did his good work across the game because he had a couple of key centre clearances when he ran through there as well later in the game, and that goal at the end was, a special.
Was when he was in the midfield.
Yeah,
as we talked about on Sunday.
that's
It's
right.
true. But what and Betts, I mean, he's just an outstanding player. But what I like about Walker's game is that our leader is a leader. He when he's got the ball, at the moment he's looking very commanding. And I remember one little situation there where he was amongst two players and he looked like he was going to kick on his right and he just bolt and then back on the left and a beautiful left foot pass from about 35 metres right onto the chest of our player. And as one of the commentators said, looked very much like Carey-like.
Yeah. That said, Hurley looked, and Nick and I talked about this on Sunday night, Hurley looked completely out of sorts, not only physically but mentally as well. And I thought it was telling that once they made the move, Tex quietened down a bit because at the moment...
Ambrose.
At the moment, Hurley isn't an AFL standard player, both physically and mentally, I don't reckon.
No, you're right about him physically. I'm surprised that he isn't in slightly better shape than he is because...
Well, don't forget, Macca, he was pretty chubby in those pictures.
He had a good year off.
And I reckon what's happened is he's dieted to drop the weight, but he hasn't got any muscle at the moment.
Yeah, you might be on the money because he was trekking around Tibet and places like that, wasn't he? With the great big whiskers all over his head.
Yeah, that's right.
He came back looking like the wild man from Borneo or somewhere.
And don't forget, he was the last person to sign back on out of all those banned players at Essendon.
Yes, that's because he was the last player back.
Well, that's what I mean. So he hadn't done any of the work that a lot of the other players had done. He had to drop weight in a hurry, which is just a paleo diet or something, an Atkins diet, and certainly didn't have enough time to put on any bulk.
No, the interesting thing with too is Watson died in the bum too, didn't he?
Yeah, well, and the same thing with Watson. He spent a year sabbatical, whereas a lot of those other guys were training through that period. Job went and poured coffee in the US, and Hurley went on a trek, and Watson doesn't look near it at the moment, and neither does Hurley.
No, and it's interesting that we even though they may not have played in a period, it's still important to done the training as if you are playing. Otherwise, when it comes to this particular season, those two boys they shone out for their lack of physical fitness, whereas the other boys, for Essendon, most of them were still running on reasonably well at the end, as well as could be expected under the circumstances of getting a bit of a hiding.
For me, with the comparison of Watson and Hurley, is you just have to look to the fact that Watson had to be really convinced to keep playing, that he was in two minds. He wasn't sure. And for Hurley, we do know that Jenkins was in his ear about actually getting him to come and play here. And from what I understand, he was wavering quite strongly. And Essendon had to really pay an exorbitant amount to convince him to stay there. So I think that both of them, you can probably take that their hearts aren't really in it after what happened.
Well, particularly for Watson after he had to hand back his Brownlow, and whilst I think that was the right outcome, you'd leave it as a player, particularly a player that feels he's been a victim, rightly or wrongly, to then have to hand back, a Brownlow medal. Do you reckon your heart would be in it?
Oh, not really.
No,
not really. I was going to ask that particular question. He physically did have to hand it back, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right. Cochin and Mitchell shared it.
Then they had to make another, because it was shared.
Yeah.
They would have had to have made at least another one. Although, hang on, they do make two they always make two or three actually for each Brownlow in case they get a tie. So they probably didn't have to make any more. So yeah, they would have wanted it back.
Yeah, and the guy would. I mean, even if they didn't physically get it back, he's not the Brownlow medalist. He might, even if he still has the medal, he's not the Brownlow medalist.
I'm a bit of a softie, I could strike him from the record, let him keep the medal. That's what I would have done.
Nah, constant reminder that you'd got it taken off you, mate. I'd be chucking it in the Yarrow if I was him.
Well, up to the individual, but in terms of performance, whether it was enhanced or not, I don't know.
No, it was.
Come on,
Never.
Macca. Come on,
Because
Macca.
you just look at him leading into that, he was nowhere near that type of player. And then all of a sudden, he just went up a number of levels, and then he fell off the cliff. As soon as they stopped doing it, went off the cliff and went back to being that player he was beforehand. It was such an aberration. You compare that with Sloaney. Last year, Sloaney had his best ever career season, but he's built. You could see him change over the years and get better year by year. And this year, he's even gone to another level above that. But you can see the progression that it's been this slow playing up, whereas there was a jump with Watson. It was just wrong.
So here's an interesting question that I don't think's been given enough airtime, because basically we don't get any airtime. We've been touted as having the most potent forward line in the competition, and yet we haven't had that forward line together for more than a quarter and a half so far this season. So is it really, how much of our scoring power is our success, is our forward line? How much of our scoring power is our midfield? And how much is it system?
Yeah.
I would say it's a lot of system, but that system is influenced by the type of players we have.
Yep.
Because Pike, when talking about on the weekend, who came in and talked about the midfield, the forward line, and they mentioned bets, etc. to him, and he pointed out that how Menzel came in and did the role he was supposed to, and he did it well. So we saw that he didn't get a lot of possessions, but he obviously had a particular role, and that was applying the pressure that Gov used to do. So we can bring in Menzel, and he can do that.
Pikey makes that point that it doesn't matter who we bring in, they'll play their role according to the structure.
And that's all well and good though, Macca, but Menzel is not McGovern.
No.
Otten is not Jenkins.
So we do change it up a little bit.
We've had different looks in the forward line almost every match. Remembering that we've been minus Tex, we've been minus Jenkins, we've been minus McGovern at various stages. So, to me, this whole situation where we've got, the lowest average disposals per score in the league and the highest scoring rate in the league, does that make us vulnerable if in fact it is a product of midfield system, if in fact our midfield system breaks down? And the reason I ask the question is because when our midfield broke down against Sydney, we had all hands on deck in the forward line, given that Jenkins was playing hurt, but we essentially had all hands on deck in the forward line and we couldn't even get close to kicking a winning score. And I'm loving the way we're playing, and I'm loving the even contribution in the midfield with the high rotations and all that sort of stuff. But I still have a fear that we're vulnerable if coaches work out our midfield structure and our press, because our forward line is shown to be not worth a pinch of shit, basically, if they don't get enough ball.
Well, that would apply to any forward line, and that applied in the third quarter, because actually we were hammered in the clearances in the third quarter, which is why the ball was going down the Essendon end, and no forward lineman can score if the ball's down the other end of the ground. So I think that's just a truism, what you were stating. I think but
Macca, it's not just the amount of forward 50s; it's the quality, right? And this is why I bring average disposals into the conversation. We averaged 12 disposals per scoring shot in the game against Essendon, right? Which is ridiculous when the average is in the mid-20s. What I'm saying is it's not the amount of service we get into the forward 50, it's the quality of the service. And we're great when we can get fast transition and quick forward entries and lace blokes out. But despite our power up forward, or our supposed power up forward, we're vulnerable to numbers down back. Geelong have got us every time, and we're vulnerable when we're not getting clean forward entries, when the ball was coming in high off a rush kick or whatever. And I want to see us tested under those circumstances, and I don't feel that we've been tested yet under those circumstances.
Let me just explain, because you're making it all about the delivery coming in, but it's the structure in the forward line. Cast your mind back 4 or 5 years. We used to stand in bloody clumps, and I can remember screaming out, "Spread, you bastards, spread," because they would just stand there in clumps. Now, at the moment, if we were playing 6, but it's often a 5-man forward line, they've all got a role to play, and the role is not to be near each other. It's to have this open forward line that if at worst there's nobody to kick to, they can kick into an open space where the players can run onto it, and that's what makes it so difficult to defend. The one team that seems to have really got onto this is Geelong, who always have an extra man back, and he's unmanned, he's not standing anybody, and if we kick it in as we do in that open space, they mop it up because they've got that loose man, and that's why they brought us undone. And
but it's not just about having loose men for Geelong. I mean, that's part of it. You got to think
it's pressure at the ball carrier.
Yeah, and if you go back and have a look at the matches last year against Geelong, the noticeable thing that's different when we played Geelong to the other games is where Enright was standing, which was basically about 30 out from goal, and the reason why the balls were hitting 30 metres out is because instead of entering from 70 metres out, just, forward side of the centre, we were actually hat kicking from around about the wing. So not only were our forward entries hurried, but they were also not as deep as what we would otherwise get. They seem to have a system that puts a lot of pressure on us coming back, so that we're forced to kick long from further out, from about 80 or 90 metres out rather than 60 or 70 metres out. We don't get the depth of entry into forward 50, and that's where they have Enright, and this year they're using Tui in that role. And what worries me is whether we've got the capability to actually break through that, I don't know what you call it, a midfield press or something or other, just their structure that allows us to get depth in our forward 50 entries.
No, that's a good point you raised there, because obviously if you're in between centre half forward and the centre of the ground, and when you go forward, well, it's a very damaging situation when you've got the whole thing open. But as you quite rightly say, if you're doing it from wing or back of wing, well, it's a totally different thing. You will never ever get into the right spot because they're going to have a man there.
No,
so
especially when we push up high, and so we're playing 1 or 2 deep, and Enright and whoever else, Harry Taylor it was last year as well, just sat in that hole. So PJ makes a good point. It's our transition work, and T Lynch is critical in that. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Pike structures us up in terms of our transition against a team like Geelong, who naturally set up that way, to see whether under that kind of game plan, whether we're able to still be as effective up forward. Because I don't think it's a clumping up issue, Mac. At last year, it was just a matter of we weren't in position. We weren't playing. Our 12 forwards weren't playing in front, and we weren't in position. So I don't know. And I'm not sold, despite our good performances so far. I'm not sold until we have problems entering forward 50 cleanly.
But remember, we used to get a lot of goals over the back, running onto the ball. That's where Geelong totally cut that out. And so it really is a combination of the two. It's a combination of the transition of the ball coming in and the players playing their role up forward. Because then what has to happen if Geelong, a team like Geelong, if they structure in a way that makes it very difficult for our normal transition to take place, we have to have an alternative. And whether we have that yet, I don't know.
Well, I think we already do.
Jason, sorry, Nicky, just to butt in. Jason on the chat makes a good point. We're quicker this year, and whether that speed actually helps us cut through the cat's press remains to be seen. But
good point.
That actually is a good point, and maybe that's why we've opted for more outside power this year. Anyway, sorry, Nicky, go on.
Well, and that was part of what I was about to mention, because that was an excellent point. But we've actually seen a change already. Our defenders are pushing up a lot higher than what they did last year. So it's not just the delivery from our midfield we're getting. We used to get a bit of run from a few players last year, which we did know with Smith, etc. But we're getting even more of that coming forward, and they're given a lot more license to leave that man and to really attack and go up forward. So if you're trying to stop our midfield, okay, you can try and stop that bit, but you've got to stop our defence from running through as well. And I think that's partly why they've pushed Lairdy through the middle, that he's getting an understanding of what's going on there. Becomes even more effective because he's understanding what our midfielders are doing and where they're supposed to be going, and if that's getting shut down, how he can come in and help. So I think we've already started to see that, and as Macca pointed out, we're not getting those Joe the Gooses anymore. We've changed our forward setup. I think at some stage we will pull out that Joe the Goose style again, because we know how that works and those players know how to do it. We don't need to do it at the moment because we're winning in other ways. So I think that Pike has very much set up a few different ways to sort that out.
And it's interesting, there was a thread on the Big Footy forums during the week talking about signpost games. And, you know, the conversation sort of developed around our ability to look at particular games and note our deficiencies in those games and make changes. And whilst it didn't appear last year that we made any particular changes in our game style, it appears that it has been addressed over the off-season, not only in our personnel but also in the way that we play. And we've seen a few different looks this year, and a few different ways that we've won this year. And it does appear as if Pike has taken the off-season to build some versatility into the way that we play, which is gives us a little bit of hope. So anyway,
the Richmond game might be interesting to see, because Hardwick is very good at trying to counter an opponent. We've seen that before, that he actually is quite a good coach about looking at the strengths of another team and trying to nullify that. So I think that game could be interesting. Yeah.
Anyway, that's probably a good segue into having a bit of a chat about the upcoming game against the Suns. Hard to get a read on the Suns after. I mean, it's hard to put a value on certain wins. I mean, they caned Hawthorn, and then you look at Hawthorn on the weekend. They look like an absolute rabble. And they look like a team that is just going through the motions, if you ask me, this year. So it's hard to get a read. But you can't underestimate a midfield that has G. Ablett and a forward line that has the Twin Peaks in Lynch and 2 metre Peter.
Yeah, no doubt about that. They were chatting on... I can't remember which one it was now last night. I think it was on Talking Footy on Channel 7. And they were talking about Lynch, and they reckon he's... if they had to get one player in the competition, if you had a choice of taking one player, and I know Jonathan Brown and a couple of others, and Wayne Carey, I think they were very adamant Lynch is the man to get. Not Jonathan Brown, Darcy. He was one that said that he would pay anything up to $1.5 million to get him because he's that good.
Yeah, you still got to be able to get the ball to him, though, don't you? He's not a rucking forward, so he's always going to be that option up forward. He's not going to give you much anywhere else. And if you're not getting the ball down there enough, then it's a lot of money sitting in the goal square, isn't it, Macca?
Yeah, but he is a formidable opponent.
No doubt.
I think he's about 6'8". What do you mean?
He's 200 plus.
Yeah.
He's a really nice mover as well.
Yeah, no, he's a good player, and they do have a very good midfield actually. Abbott's really only one of the support players these days. They've still got a good midfield, and then they can move the ball very quickly. I don't know that their overall strength on the ground is going to be good enough to match us. But if we have a real game on our hand, it will be because of their midfield and those twin peaks up forward. Because we've got nobody that height, so we have to make sure that the ball comes in ugly rather than pretty.
Well, we also need to be very mindful of Sard.
Yeah, a lot of speed there. I mean, we dealt with GWS's 12 forward line without too much trouble. I don't have any problems with Hartigan and Talia being able to make a good fist of those two big fellas, and remind me to bring that up in the Cockwomble as well, that word.
that was going to be mentioned as one of the nominations. And speaking of, then it's actually going to be a lot on Lever to come in as the third man up.
Well, that was going to be my point.
Good point. Excellent point.
He showed, particularly early against Essendon, that he's back to his intercepting ways. So it will be very interesting. Of course, we've got Jake Kelly possibly missing this week. Haven't heard about how good or bad his eye injury is as yet. So
I heard Lever talking about him on 5AA, and he was saying that he hasn't even had a patch over his eye, and he thinks he'll be all right.
Oh, well, hopefully that's the case. Because we're running a bit short on those third tall defenders now, aren't we? Cheney's out, Otten's up forward, Lever's only just come back in.
And Dode's played his one game so far in the SANFL.
Yeah, and that was only really half a game, wasn't it? So...
Yeah, a little over half, I think it was, all up.
I think the key for Gold Coast is to keep their guns quiet. I think their good players are very good, but I think it falls away fairly quickly. Whereas I think we've got a more even spread around the ground, as been shown by how we've won in the stats over the first 4 rounds.
Yeah, that's the key to it.
Yeah, I think if we can keep their second and third string players down, and keep control over your G. Ablets and those type of players, then I think we'll win comfortably. But if we allow those guns to get off the chain a bit, it's going to be a very difficult afternoon.
Well, Hall is an excellent player. He's got speed, and he's prepared to run all day, and he's a potentially 35 possession player in the game. Took Miller's having a pretty good year on the ball as well. And he's another speedy customer as well. They've got what's the little fella in the kicks goals, the little left footer? Matera's right back to form now as well. So and Ablett, he's been insulted and he took that personally and he played a very good game and I'm expecting him to go well as well. I think that from now on Ablett will play pretty well for the year and. So I think their midfield is a dangerous one, and
you've forgotten someone. You've forgotten someone, Macca. But JL had 30 plus, and got a really big bouquet from Rocket Eade regarding the value he's brought to their midfield. He's clean. He's good by hand and foot, and he gets the ball. He's a contested ball player. So. Don't underestimate the balance that JL has brought to the Gold Coast midfield.
No, I'm not. But everybody's got to have some vanilla soldiers in their team. And
30 vanillas are not bad.
He's not vanilla.
No, what I'm saying, he doesn't stand out for any particular reason, but he does his job.
Well, you need to read his stats because he certainly brings.
He's
stuff
doing more
to the
than
table.
his job.
His inside 50s, his stat is always high. His contested numbers are always high. And his disposal efficiency is usually pretty good. And when you've got a few star outsiders in that team, someone effective, like a Matt Crouch for us, someone effective as at shoveling in and getting the ball out to these outsiders, it's invaluable.
You mentioned Matt Crouch. I think he's gone to another level this year. I think he's playing very good football. He's starting to use his brain a little bit when he's got the ball.
Yeah, but he's still vanilla, Mako.
Oh, no, he's better than vanilla.
No, he's not.
No, he reads the ball a lot better than Line. No, you can't. You cannot compare the two.
Yeah, I can.
You don't even notice he's on the field.
Well, I don't notice Crouchy getting 30 touches either, to be honest with you.
He's a left footer, for God's sake. Even that makes him stand out.
Well, every time he gets it on his left foot, it's a little fairy floss kick to the opposition.
No, not true, not true. That would have been true last year, but this year he's genuinely looking when he comes out the packs.
Do you remember the second clearance of the game last week?
Look, you're talking one.
Yeah, I know. And then he stopped kicking it after that.
I could talk about Lions missing targets too, so, it's a...
Which is a rarity.
All right. Well, why did you marry him when he was here, Nicky? He's that good.
Come on, mate.
I can admire a footballer for their football ability. We knew last year exactly how good his delivery into the forward line could be.
Yeah, the stats bore it out.
He is a handy player, but he's not a star.
No, neither's Matt Crouch.
I'd rather have Matt Crouch.
Okay. Now, speaking of a Crouch, and he's not back this week, I don't think.
Probably not.
How does Bradley fit into our mix? Because my feeling is that Brad in our midfield is similar to what Scott Thompson in his last couple of years in our midfield was, and that means it makes it slower.
It's true what you're saying. I wouldn't be bringing him in this week. I'd like to see him play another one in the SAFL. And although I really have got a question mark on Menzel, he hasn't satisfied my question mark. I know the coach is saying he's playing his role. And they always used to say that about Mackay, and everybody used to poo-poo that as well. To me, he's okay, but I keep wondering why the hell we went after him when I watch him.
Okay, so PJ's made some really good points in the chat, and he's just made an absolute balls up of one, saying that Brad comes in for Curly. No.
Not a chance.
Curly is not getting dropped at all. If anybody is going out, I actually suspect it will be a toss-up between Douglas and Mackay, and it could be that Mackay does go out and we move Douglas back.
What about Miller?
For me, the problem I've got there is that's that outside run, and his speed is probably a bit better than Mackay's, but Mackay will go in and tackle, as we know, whereas Miller at the moment won't. It all depends on what the coaching staff want from Miller, or what they're expecting, and whether they're okay with what he's delivering at the moment in terms of them looking at his development.
Yeah, Hampton won't.
So I can't make a call on what's going to happen with Miller, because I think that's something that internally we just can't know, and we can't gauge from outside.
No, yeah. But even if he's in for development, Nick, I'm starting to wonder whether it's actually doing his development any good at the moment, because he does drop his bundle a bit, and he really doesn't commit to the player at all. We highlighted a couple of examples on Sunday, so I won't go through them again, but I just wonder whether he needs a few SANFL games with some pretty clear directives on what's expected in terms of attack on the ball and the body.
Which we know you can do.
Yeah, but he appears to be very much a confidence player, which is a bit of a concern, because that can be quite fickle. We need players that are resilient, that can make a blue or miss a tackle or something and get up and do it again. And he appears to drop out of games when he makes a blue, and we just can't afford to have that. And do you sink another half a dozen games into Miller or doing that, or do you look at someone like a Greenwood or a Harry Wigg or someone of that nature, and give them an opportunity?
Yeah, look, I think Miller had 19 possessions off memory, didn't he? And and I know that the physical side of his game is the weakness that he's got at the moment. But I would leave him in there.
It's not just physical, Macca. It's defensive in general.
I know, I agree, but I would leave him in there as long as it's possible, without it being detrimental to the team too much, because he's going to end up being a very, very good player, and the more he plays, the better he'll get.
Yeah, but is it detrimental to the team if you leave another player out who could be better right now?
Only if they don't carry their weight, and I think he's carrying his weight enough. That coming back to Hampton, I just want to make one point about Hampton. He had 26 pressure acts. Hampton did, and that was the highest for the Crows. And
no highest on both sides.
Yeah, and I think people are missing the hard work that this guy is doing. He's doing a lot of the hard work, and the others are getting the glory. And so I think he's been a huge asset to our team. He's actually doing a lot of the stuff that Tomo would have done in the past when he was at his best. But he's
quicker.
But he was about 12 times quicker. I was going to make that point. And
he rarely actually tackles people around the head.
No, I like him.
Yeah, that's a bonus.
Yes, Tomo, and he doesn't give away that crucial free like Tomo always does. But I like Hampton. I think he adds a lot to our midfield. And I think another one that's actually been a bit of a conundrum is Douglas, who's really found form this year, playing back on the ball. So we bring in Crouch. We are slowing it down, but for the life of me, the only one I can see going out is Menzel, and with Miller going into the forward lines.
Well, no, see, because Menzel will be in until McGovern comes back. One thing that I think is quite clear is that there are specific groups of players, and I think Menzel at this stage is Gov's understudy. I don't see Menz playing too many other roles in the current 22 as it stands. We've got B. Crouch, Harry Wigg, Hugh Greenwood in the midfield group. So you'd think that they're the ones in contention should any of the current midfield rotation drop out. I'd really like to see David McKay have a rest. His junk time disposals notwithstanding, his input when the game is there to be won has been severely lacking over the last couple of weeks. And I think it's time. We need to start putting games into a guy like Hugh Greenwood. Hugh Greenwood's 25 years old. He looks like Bontempelli when he runs. We've got to let him have a couple of games, because when it gets to the pointy end and things get tough, Macca, that big body in the middle, as far as I'm concerned, could be invaluable. And at the moment, the one thing that we do lack is a little bit of size in the middle to go with a Kennedy, a Parker or a Hanbury. And Hugh Greenwood could add to that mix quite nicely, and I'd really like to see him get a bit of a run.
I think he will, but I don't think it'll be until about, maybe the round 9, 10, 11 stage of the season. And
can't be much later than that.
No, but I think that's about where he'll come in if he's going to get it. If we're right and they are in agreement with us that he can add that big body that we do need. I like him. I think he plays very good footy, and I think that given the opportunity on a regular basis, that he can add something to the side. But it won't be for the next few weeks.
Here's something out of left field a little bit. What happens if we give Matt Crouch a rest if his shoulder starts troubling him and we bring in Brad Crouch then?
No.
Well, I mean, that could happen in the short term, Nick, but that's not really a long term. It's, if you're searching for your best 22, and if you're searching for your best 22 that suits the style that we appear to be playing, which is pay attention to contested ball, but ensure we've got enough pace on the outside, then really, the one that I'm really concerned about is Brad Crouch in terms of his leg speed. Because we'll have Hampton will have to start playing a more outside role, and he's excelled quite well inside, or playing a bit of an in-out role.
See, Brad does have leg speed.
Yeah, but not at the moment.
He's just not sure of using it. One of the big highlights for me in the SANFL game was a little something that happened in the centre. Was the South Adelaide player was got a little bit freer and was about to grab hold of the ball, and because of the way it was bouncing and the way he was moving, you just saw Brad back off a little bit, wait for that bit of movement, and he just then put his hand in, tapped the ball down like we've seen Eddie do that little basketball bounce with it, to then run and just completely break away from that pack. South had done very well at just keeping hold of him for most of the game, but he still kind of has that leg speed. And PJ says that Brad doesn't have AFL leg speed. There was one of the Port showdowns where he was actually regularly breaking away, and that's when Port were kind of at their running best. He actually does have that speed. We know from training reports that he was actually pretty much as quick as Dangerfield. He was keeping pace with him easily. He's just not confident at using it.
Well, it's not only that, Nick. That we're talking about 2013. The guy's missed so much training, and he's had so many leg issues. It could be 6 to 12 months before he regains that kind of speed. And we're talking the here and now, aren't we? And he's great inside. His tackling work and his defensive pressure in close is really good. Again, we're talking balance, I guess, and structure. And I don't think we're going to have an answer right now, but I guess the outcome is it's going to be really interesting to see the selection over the next few weeks, barring injury, to see whether Don actually thinks we've got our best rotation in the middle at the moment.
Yeah, the other thing I was just thinking that if we're going to bring Brad Crouch into the middle, and that means one moves out, it could be not out of the side, but I was just thinking in terms of like for speed, it would be Douglas and Brad Crouch. So if Dougie moved out and Brad Crouch moved in, and that means you'd have to relocate and find another home for Dougie, and that could mean that Douglas might even move out onto a wing and Miller out the side of it then.
Or Douglas the halfback. That rotation wing with McKay, so McKay goes out.
Well, if Kelly's out, then that would probably be what would happen, actually, that Douglas would go back to that halfback playing.
See, I don't want Dougie a halfback. I don't want him a half forward. He's a midfielder. And he's done a couple of jobs. He's had a couple of run with roles this season. And
played well.
I wouldn't mind betting that he has a run with on Ablett on the weekend. His form's been good since he's been back in the middle, and I don't really want to mess with that. I don't know, Mac. I don't know the answer, and I don't think. I mean, we're just going around in circles now, so we might as well just leave it there. But all I'll say is that selection's going to be quite interesting over the next month.
Dougie is playing well, and I think you're right. He, in hindsight, I'll retract my comment because I think he will be the one that will run with Ablett.
Yeah. So our predictions, are we confident?
We're 9 and zip.
They've never beaten us, and
no.
And I don't think this will be the week that they do. I can see us, 5 or 6 goals.
I think that Gold Coast will push us. I think it should actually be a pretty good game, but I think we've got that better defence than what they do, and Mayout is a huge loss. So if we can at least break even or get transition and turning it over from the back half, then I don't think they're going to be able to cope with our forward line.
Yeah, I tend to agree. As I said earlier, my opinion is that we've got a far more even spread across the 22 players, and as long as we bring our A game and we don't drop off like we did in the third quarter, and let's face it, even in the first half against Essendon, there wasn't a lot of defensive running going on. It was a shootout, and we were always going to smash them in a shootout. But our mids weren't getting back behind the ball very often, so it's going to be a test to make sure their midfield switches back on for this game. But assuming they do, and assuming no injuries or anything like that, I'd expect probably about a 5-goal win.
So we were about the same.
Yeah, I think so. All right, we better leave that as it is. And before we wrap it up, because we're over the hour mark, and like really over the hour mark, considering we're half an hour late, let's quickly have a cockwomble. Hang on a sec. Let me play this stupid thing.
It's not stupid.
It's pretty stupid.
You made it.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's the first thing I could find. Anyway, go on. Cockwomble.
Well, there's actually a number of them. So we'll actually start off with something that happened last night with dear old Hutchie on Footy Classified made the statement in their good call, bad call segment. He was asked the question, is Paddy McCartan a poor number one pick? His reply was, of course, they should have picked up Bontempelli because he's the better player.
Pathetic effort. That's pretty...
Bontempelli was drafted in the 2013 draft, and McCartan was the number one draft in the 2014 draft. Whoops.
Yeah, Hutchie's never been big on facts.
There you go. There you go again, Nicky. Bloody technicalities.
I wasn't the only one, but the fact that nobody actually corrected him was hilarious.
They didn't either.
I actually do want to nominate somebody from the SANFL game of South and the Crows, because one of the umpires, when a South Adelaide player had marked along the goal line, he was going to set him up. The player had already stepped out and he was technically in the play-on position. The umpire warned him, you take one step, I'm going to call play on. So the player took a step. The umpire did not call play on. The umpire made sure the time was still off and made him go back and retake the kick. If you're going to threaten a player, umpire, follow through on the threat.
Just on that too, and it's not cockwomble, but whatever. Has anyone else picked up that someone takes a mark, he goes back off his mark, he takes one step to the side and it's play on? Like, you've run off your line. I mean, it's ridiculous. You take a couple of steps off your line, fair enough, but people are just looking to the side and getting called play on these days.
Yeah, without even moving off the line, which is ridiculous.
I can't remember which game it was, but I think you're probably talking about the same one, Phoenix, where somebody moved about 6 inches off the line with 1 foot and it was called play on. And then went for holding the ball then.
And yet you watch Hawthorn, they're allowed to basically go halfway across the ground anyway. So, Nikki, you've got to get to the obvious winner this week.
Which is dear old Basil, who can't remember our players' names, who completely miscalls players as one or the other.
Well, he said Jenkins got the first tap, which was funny.
that was quite amusing.
Well done.
But shall I actually leave you to explain exactly? I think it might be better coming from you.
I actually thought it would be more funny coming from you, Nick.
I was trying to avoid saying it.
What happened, Nikki?
Lever did some really good defensive work.
Who did? Lever.
Jake Lever?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was a really good defensive work.
What did he actually do? What did he actually do?
He spoiled the ball.
And what did he use to spoil his ball?
Part of his body. He used his fists.
Yes, and what was Basil's comment?
It was something along the line that he's
I remember
the best
it
at
now.
fisting.
He's one of the best fisters in the competition, I think was the words, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
That is exactly what he said.
It's like, seriously, Basil, we already know you're a shit commentator. We hate games that you are on because you're this Dennis Committee wannabe try-hard, and you might be from Western Australia, but you are not fit to even come within the
J-Max got it right, the king of fisting.
Fisting.
He's the king of fisting.
You're fisting.
The part about that I enjoyed the most was the sound of the 2 chairs either side of Basil falling over as the two commentators just fell off. Because there was just like dead silence for about 5 seconds, and you could just tell that all the mics had been turned off at that moment.
Trying to get away from the pervert.
I wish I didn't have time to find the sound grab, but if I can find it, I can't remember what quarter it was in.
We'll play it next week.
I'll
reckon it was.
Was it?
I reckon it was in the third.
Yeah, yeah. It was just classic commentary, and I'm going to find the sound grab, and we'll have to play it. It's just hilarious.
Too classic.
Yes. So does he win? I reckon he wins, surely.
I think he wins because the whole idea behind the cockwomble was not just something that was stupid. The best one should also make us laugh a bit. And a lot of them they're stupid and they make us angry. But that one was just, dude, no.
It was just hilarious. Now, just on the commentary, are we seriously that bereft of commentators in this country that we have to put up with blokes like Zampelis and BT and
Brian Taylor, for God's sake! What a replace! I mean, Dennis Committee. That's like replacing a solid gold article with a piece of brass. So he's just not in the same league.
But
quite honestly,
even committee was a parody of himself by the end of it.
Yeah. For me, Clinton Gribus is just one of the biggest losses we've ever had. I quite actually like Adam Pampilla, who's also good from Western Australia, and he's a good commentator. Yep. That's all we want.
I reckon the guy that actually commentates in the SANFL, what's his name? Not Sodas. I forget his name. I reckon he'd be right. As an AFL commentator, he commentates the game. He doesn't waffle too much.
And that's what you need. You need the one solid commentator, and then you have the colour commentators just to provide a little bit extra.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just tired of these blokes like Zampelis who are looking for every opportunity they can find to come up with the grand soundbite. That's all Zampelis does. He just looks for a soundbite every time. Just commentate the bloody game. That's all we want. We can see the game in front of us. We just need to know who the bloody player is and give us a little bit of opinion if you like, and that's about it. You're not part of the... It's like a good commentator shouldn't really be noticed, just like a good umpire shouldn't be noticed. Anyway.
That doesn't happen the latter.
No.
Yeah.
Anyway. Never mind. That was cock-wombling numbnut of the week to Basil Zampelis.
That's going to be hard to actually beat throughout the rest
Pathetic
of the year,
effort.
really.
That's pretty hard on an individual, but he's going to have to live with that.
You'll make a good fist of it, Nicky.
Oh dear. I reckon on that note, we need to run away.
Yeah, I reckon we've just about... This could actually be a cock-wombling numbnut of a crowcast, actually.
Yeah, us. We nominate us as well.
It actually could be the worst that we've ever done. And I'm really grateful to the people that have remained on chat and endured the rubbish that we've spewed forth for the last hour and a bit. Don't forget, John Casey, thanks, Vardy. He'd be good.
Ah, yes.
Don't forget, if you're still if you're still awake, you can follow us on Twitter or Facebook, AFL Crowcast. You can leave us a like on iTunes. Give us a review on iTunes. Not of this week's podcast. Listen to a previous one or maybe next week. And you can listen to Scorpus, who will be far more polished on Thursday night, pardon me, as he previews the Gold Coast game, and hopefully I'll be along for that one. So thanks very much to everyone. And I can't even find the outro track. Yeah, all right. See you later, guys.
Just hum us out.
Good night, all.
See ya.
pathetic effort. Well, that's pretty hard on an individual, but he's going to have to live with that.